Welcome back to All Again, and today I'm going to be reviewing Death Magnetic by Metallica. But before we jump into that, if you're new to my channel and you haven't already subscribed, please hit the button below. If you could also like the video, I'd really appreciate that as it helps with my channel. Okay, so I'm running through all the Metallica albums in reverse chronological order. I started with 72 Seasons. I've already reviewed Hardwired to Self-Destruct as well. So this week, for Metal Monday, we're doing this album, Death Magnetic, and it's going to be added to the playlist. So make sure you go and check out the playlist and you can catch the previous episodes and reviews that I've done. And the plan here is to run right the way into Christmas with a different album every week, different Metallica album. And then on the week of Christmas, for the end of the year, I'm going to go through a Metallica ranking, and it's going to be more comprehensive than my previous ranking. And there may be some changes as I re-listen to these albums and dive even deeper in. So stay tuned for that one. Okay, so we'll jump into the details about Metallica Death Magnetic. So it was released in 2008 and the 9th studio album by the band. The last studio album before this album was Saint Anger in 2003, so there was a 5-year gap between the albums. Death Magnetic has gone on to sell over 5 million copies worldwide, and it got to number 1 in 24 countries up on its release. So that includes the USA, the UK, Ireland, Australia, Canada. The album has won 2 Grammy Awards, one for Best Metal Performance and one for Best Record. And the style of this album, it's back to Metallica's roots. It's a thrash metal album, and they really decided, following Saint Anger, that was a very divisive album. Some fans loved it, but most fans didn't like it at all. So they decided to go back to their roots, reintroduce guitar solos, long songs, and have this as a traditional thrash metal album in similar vein to what they had put out in the 1980s. So in terms of the packaging and artwork on this one, so I still have the price tag on the album there. You can see it. It was €15.99 in 2008. So yeah, pretty expensive for a CD back at that time. You can see there, I'll just open up so you can see the cover a little bit better. But essentially it's Death Magnetic, so it's a coffin and then it's got a magnetic field around it. And within the coffin, they've actually cut open the pages, or cut out the coffin shape on the pages. So as you go deeper down into the pages, you're going deeper down to the coffin, and then you get the coffin on the back. The words are split up on either side of the coffin and on each of the pages, and to be honest with you, some of the words are actually completely cut off. So it's interesting concept. It's something different, but yeah, not something I really thought was too good at the time. But anyway, they don't actually have Metallica's logo or the logo of the album on the front of this. That's actually saved for the front of the CD. Now this was a new type of jewel case. It's got the cornered edges on it, and it's got this new mechanism where you press a button and the CD case lifts up like this. So pretty cool, but CDs died shortly after this, so not too many of these about, these types of jewel cases. But the Metallica and Death Magnetic is actually a sticker that's on the jewel case, which is good, but it means if you crack the jewel case, you're kind of stuck. You need to try and take that sticker off and put it onto your new jewel case. So not the most ideal, but I suppose they were going for something new. I've had this album since 2008 and still no cracks yet on it, so I think it is a strong case and it probably will last the test of time. Okay, so that was the packaging. So the themes on this one, obviously death was one of the main themes on this album, or the main subject matter for the songs, and the whole I suppose Kirk Hammett was talking about it. It was the attraction of death or the repelling of death. So that was the whole magnetic field. So Death Magnetic, the two words put together, kind of had that concept. The album was released through Vertigo Records in Europe and Warner Records in the USA. But this was the last album that was released by a record company until Metallica basically put together their own record label called Blackened Records, and the last 2 albums, Hardwired to Self-Destruct and 72 Seasons, have both been released on Metallica's own record label, Blackened Recordings. and they also have a European arm of that company and a USA arm and a rest of the world arm. So yeah, it's interesting and it's good. It's good for any band to have their own record label, that they're not tied to a specific record label. So Metallica have that now in place. This one was produced by Rick Rubin, and it was quite controversial, because the sound on this album, it's, although the mixing is quite good, the dynamic range is very low, which essentially means that in the mastering process, they turned the volume so high on all of the instrumentations and all the tracks that it reduced the dynamic range, and this led to excessive compression, which basically means that the album sounds very loud, but it's not very pleasing to the ear because the dynamic range isn't very wide. So the difference in volume between the quiet parts and the loud parts, it's not really that audible. It all just comes across as a brick wall sound. So there was many different reasons for that. I have just doing some research on the album. I had read that Rick Rubin oversaw the mixes, the final mixes of the album, while the band were on tour in Europe. But Lars still thinks the album sounds good. But to be honest, I think it kind of takes away from it. So yeah, it was recorded in Shangri-La Studios in Los Angeles, and also in Sound City Studios in Los Angeles. And there was some recording that took place in headquarters, Metallica's headquarters in San Rafael. So the band lineup for this one, so it was James Hetfield on vocals, Lars Ulrich on drums. James Hetfield on vocals and rhythm guitar, Lars Ulrich on drums, Kirk Hammett on lead guitar, and Rob Trujillo on bass. This is the first album where Robert Trujillo played bass on the album. So Greg Fidelman actually mixed this album. He was a mixing engineer. So Greg had worked on the last two albums, Hardware to Self-Destruct and 72 Seasons, as a producer. But on this album, he was introduced to the band as a mixing engineer, and obviously he got on so well with the band, and they were so impressed with his professionalism and his style of engineering that they decided to hire him as a full-time producer for the band. And I think he works exclusively with Metallica at the moment. So on this album, Metallica returned to the formula that was so successful in the 1980s on the albums Ride the Lightning, Master of Puppets, and Injustice for All. So essentially that formula was a really heavy thrash song to open the album, a ballad song at number 4, and then they would have an instrumental track towards the end of the album. And they'd also have a title track on those albums. But in this album, they actually don't have a title track. They do mention the words Death Magnetic on one of the songs, but they don't actually have a song called Death Magnetic. But there is a ballad song on this at number 4. It's The Day That Never Comes. And they do also have an instrumental song in the form of Suicide and Redemption. So it was interesting to see that. This album was also the first album that was recorded outside the San Francisco Bay Area since the Black Album in 1991, which was recorded in Los Angeles as well, but this time at a different studio, 101 Studios. So overall, to be honest, I think this album is very strong. It's definitely my favourite album since the turn of the century by Metallica. It's my favourite that they've released. If we just go through some of the tracks here, it starts off with That Was Just Your Life, and then The End of the Line. I think they're both quite strong songs. And then we go into Broken Beat and Scarred, which I think is a great song. Brilliant riffing, great swing in that one. Really love that. And then we come to The Day That Never Comes, which is, I think, Metallica's best song since probably Back to the Load era. I'd say the best song they've released. An absolutely fantastic song, The Day That Never Comes. And it was a worldwide hit at the time as well. And then we have All Nightmare Long, which is a great thrash metal song. And then Cyanide, again, another great riff and a great groove on that song. I think that was the first single that was put out as a promotional single for the album. But yeah, really, really like Cyanide. Then we have Unforgiven 3. So they had Unforgiven 2 previously on Reload, and obviously the original Unforgiven was released as a part of the Black Album. So this is Unforgiven 3. And then we have the Judas Kiss, Suicide and Redemption, and My Apocalypse to finish off. So yeah, all in all, I think this is a very strong album by Metallica. I think the songs really stand up, and it would sit in with the albums in the 1980s in terms of the style, but also the playing is fantastic on it. It really sounds good. The only bad point I'd have against this album is the fact that it's so heavily compressed that it's hard to enjoy it. I did listen to it a number of times for this review, and I found that it was hard to listen to because it was so brick-walled and there was no dynamics between the instruments and the parts and the songs, and you end up having sore ears from listening to this album a number of times. So that was my only complaint about it, but overall I think I'd have to give the album a 7 out of 10. So let me know in the comments what you think of the album. Do you think this is one of Metallica's better albums since the year 2000? Or maybe you don't think this is a great album at all, and how does it fit into their previous thrash metal classic albums from the 1980s? Please let me know in the comments what your opinion is. So yeah, if you could like the video, I'd really appreciate it. And if you could also have a look at some of these other videos if you're interested in this video, because those videos might actually appeal to you as well. And as I said, I'm putting the Metal Monday videos into a playlist so you can catch them. You can also subscribe to the channel, which I greatly appreciate, and I post a new video every day on different genres of music, and Metal Mondays will continue in reverse chronological order with the Metallica reviews of each album. Okay, so bye for now, and I'll talk to you on the next one.